So, hello everybody, welcome back. It's great to be back here myself. I haven't been around for a little while, and we're back in such good weather since last time. And I'm really happy to introduce to you Cora Edwards here, who's going to take us on I took you guys on a journey to King Arthur's Hall not so long ago, and we went back to a place. Well, Cora's going to do a similar sort of thing with the past life regression, quantum theory stuff. So without further ado, I am very excited and pleased to announce Cora Edwards to our group.
I trained in quantum hypnosis about 5 years ago now, I think it is. So it's something that I came to relatively recently. I've always been connected in some way to sort of the esoteric type of knowledge. I've always had a very open mind, I would say, and I've always had a deep intuitive knowing that there's more to this reality than we can see. But my connection with quantum hypnosis meant that as I trained, I had to have sessions myself because we swapped, and so I've done an awful lot of hypnosis myself now, hypnotic journeys, which is kind of a journey into the subconscious mind, and plus I've done lots of sessions for other people, so I've seen it from both sides, and it's kind of formed a picture of some really interesting information that's come through, which hopefully I'll find a way to share some of that with you as we go through the talk. So I need to figure out. So I'm just going to start by... Can you all hear? Am I speaking loud enough? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to start just by a little bit of background about me. I was born in Wallingford, Oxfordshire, which I recently discovered is actually on the Michael-Mary line. It's next to a node point, quite close by a node point. I became interested in where I'd lived geographically in terms of energy lines after I'd moved here to West Devon, because I moved to Milton Abbott. And 5 years ago, before I moved here, I was trying to figure out where I'd be, and I'd already discovered that I could use my pendulum for dowsing. So I was using that to sort of guide me on a map, and it was kind of pulling me to the Lidford area, and it was showing me that I'd be living on the line. And I hadn't, obviously, you couldn't plan that if you tried to. I was looking at all sorts of places, and the places I was looking wasn't really here, but every time I tried to move over there, the sales would fall through and things wouldn't work. And when this place came up, you're in visual sight line of the church. And I think that the energy line runs straight past my house. But once I discovered that, I looked back at all the other places that I'd lived, and I started to discover a little bit of a pattern in where I'd been going to. So obviously Wallingford here, you can see, you've got the crossing point of the Michael and Mary line. Wallingford's just below that. And then after that, shortly after that, we moved to Chingford. And I didn't really think about this, but Chingford is on the axis of heaven line. It's directly above Greenwich. So it's on the axis Mundi, which is a really powerful line, I think. And I was born into quite a strange and peculiar family. I've only recently realised, I think pretty much everyone in my family is probably on the autistic spectrum, but my dad is a typical autistic person, and he has obsessiveness about topics, and he is really eccentric and peculiar. So he fixes watches, he's a horologist, and both my parents are immensely interested in antiques and antiquity. So as a child, I went to every single stately home that exists, I think. I've probably been to every single church in every single town that we visited. We went into all the churches. We travelled greatly through France. And we went to some Mont Saint-Michel and various other sort of historical places. So as a person, I've obviously planned that as a soul to come into that family and go to all of those places. It was obviously my destiny to go to those places. It's just along with living on these lines. So shortly after that, when I was 9, we moved to Letchworth, which is also, we lived right on the energy line of the Michael-Mary line again. We moved on to another quite powerful point, first on one side and then on the other, and we first moved there to the straight opposite church, St George's Church. I don't know if there's any significance to that particular site, but it's incredibly close to the Icknield Way. And then I found myself going to college, and similar to Alex, she was talking about the course that she did. I went to study art, and for my degree piece, I had this like huge interest in ancient burial mounds, and I based my craft work on the hidden artifacts and hidden mysteries of the earth, and did lots of reading up about Skara Brae and things like that. So even at that sort of age, I was very drawn towards sort of the earth and earth energies and that sort of thing. So after that, we moved to Crinch St Michael. We worked on an orchard briefly, and the energy line again runs straight through there. And then Langport, energy line runs through there. I moved there, and the actual straight line alignment runs straight next to where my house was, really close to Burramump and Glastonbury, which is a massively important site. So I spent quite a lot of 15 years there, travelling around, and that's when I began to realise about the Michael Mary line and got the map prior to moving here. So similar to Stuart as well, I studied horticulture, and I've always been very closely connected to the land and to dowsing. Dowsing was something that I started to do, but I didn't realise that groups like this existed and that you all were sort of very intuitive about the land and sort of had these images of dragons and all of this stuff I didn't know. So when I found you, I was incredibly excited. So that there were other people like me. So obviously I've spent the last 7 years in Milton Abbot, which is also on a line. So from a very early age, I feel that I believed in ghosts and their existence. When I was quite young, me and some friends, we did a Ouija board, which I wouldn't suggest as a good idea to anybody, but we had quite a scary thing happen. We saw things moving, and it was quite scary, actually. We even thought about calling a priest at the time, but that was sort of a very clear indication to me that there are things out there that you really shouldn't mess around with. There are energies which aren't positive, and we saw it with our own eyes. There was absolutely no denying that something quite powerful was at work. I found a little book shortly after we'd moved, which, according to Alex, is Geomancy figures. You probably can't see them clearly, but I found this shortly after we moved house as quite a small child, and it's got like questions, and then it's got these Geomancy figures, and I used to use this to get answers to questions that I had. So I'd use this little book, and I knew sort of deep down that was actually giving me the answers. So it's all of those sort of things that sort of connect you to your intuition. And astrology, I had friends at the age of 18 that were really good astrologers, and they showed me how to do the charts, and I could see that there was a lot of truth and accuracy to a very in-depth astrology chart. So all of these things, runestones was another thing. I made some runestones when I was 18, and I don't know what inspired me to do that. Picked some pebbles up from the seaside, drew the symbols on, and started to learn how to use them. And later on, much later in life, maybe 20 years later, I had an Akashic reading done for me, and someone said that one of my guides was a man with runestones, which was an interesting connection there. So I'd always had an interest in mediumship and tarot readers, and as I began to go to see more of these people would tell me things like, we think that you can access the Akashic records, or that you might be clairaudient, but I didn't feel that I had the ability to do these things. To me, it was something that other people were born with these gifts. You were either a medium or you weren't. You were born with the ability to sort of have extra sight, etc. I didn't feel that as a human species that was something that we were all intrinsically able to do, which I'm starting to realise now is definitely the case. I think it's all to do with our belief system and what we believe about ourselves. I do believe that we can all connect to these. Basically, it's just different ways to connect to our intuition and knowing and all of this information that's been locked away inside of us or outside of us that we can connect to bring through. So after I'd moved here in 2020, for some reason, I do not know why, I thought that would be a good idea to train to be a teacher. So I went on the course, and that was around the time that COVID broke out. And obviously being in a school environment during that time, it hit me really hard that the systems in place and the way that the world was set up was really not beneficial for the human psyche and for our sort of emotional well-being. I didn't pass the course, probably fortunately, but at that time I was watching a lot of past life regression sessions on the internet. I was finding it really fascinating. And as I came out of the course and found myself a bit disillusioned, I'd been given a grant to do this, and I had £700 left over. And one of the people that I'd been watching online, her sessions, which I'd found really interesting, she'd just decided that she was going to launch her own type of hypnosis therapy. So I just happened to have exactly the right amount of money that I would need left over from this course that I'd done to be able to enroll in her course. And I just kind of felt fated to be. And the course was starting, the first day was going to be on my birthday. I thought, what an amazing thing to do on my birthday. So I'm going to be 50 years old, I'll treat myself, I'll do this. It's fascinating, I'd love to give it a go. And that was sort of the start of a really interesting journey for me, because I met such amazingly interesting people, obviously, as you can imagine, similar to your community, where it's full of really interesting souls. The people that are drawn to that type of thing are also fascinating people. And I tend to find that you have soul connections with people. So as we were training, this slide is slightly irrelevant to that. But as we were training, you'd be doing sessions with people, and then you'd swap with people, and you'd find that both of you would be in the lifetime, you'd be playing different roles. So you'd had lifetimes where you were playing different roles with one another in different experiences. So this slide here is just like all of the background things that I was thinking about and that I was becoming aware of, because I think like 4 to 5 years ago, the energies on Earth have been like changing so rapidly that our thought forms are being supported to sort of expand as well as the energies on Earth. And so I'm a natural born skeptic. I've been brought up in this world of like what we see is what is real, and what we can't see is not necessarily real. And things like unicorns, dragons, UFOs. I mean, I thought there was the possibility there was life on other planets, but things like Sasquatch and Bigfoot and fairies and all of those things, to me, it was just a little bit too much of a stretch of the imagination. It almost felt like wishful thinking. I couldn't really get my head around that being a reality, but I became really interested in meditating and energy clearing and shielding my energy before meditating. So that was all happening at the same time as I was discovering hypnosis. And what I would discover once I started doing these sessions was that all of these things were actually real. Even the hairy Bigfoot. Because I saw it all. But anyway, so the modality of quantum hypnosis was first discovered by somebody called Dolores Cannon. And what she discovered was, I think she was wanting to use hypnosis for a very sort of mundane thing, perhaps giving up smoking, just being healthier. And once she got between her and her partner, one of them went into a hypnotic state, and they became somnambulistic, which is something that doesn't really happen these days when you do hypnosis. But for them, I think because the energies on Earth were much lower, to get into that connective state almost required a disconnect of your conscious mind, because they were connecting in on a level to other lifetimes and other experiences, but they were completely unaware of what was going on. They had no conscious memory of it when they came round after the hypnosis session. And that's not something that tends to happen these days. It's very, very rare. But pretty much all of the clients that Dolores saw in those early days when she first started using this method on other people to quantum heal and quantum travel, pretty much all of them were somnambulistic. They would not be aware of what was happening until after they woke up. And she would record all of their conversations on tape recorders. And what this requires that you do is to go into a hypnotic state. You probably all know about the different brainwave states. So the theta brainwave state is an ideal brainwave state for hypnosis, where you're relaxed, you can visualize. It's the same brainwave state as you would be in when you're just waking up, just falling asleep. When you're driving a car, I tend to sort of do a lot of meditation when I'm driving a car, because I naturally switch into that state of being. I find it really easy to connect in that state. And when you're in that state, then that gives you the opportunity for these images to come to you as your subconscious or your higher self or God, source, creator, to sort of communicate with you by giving you images, speaking with you, giving you a sense of things. There's various different ways that you can connect in with that subconscious part of yourself, and everybody will have a way that is best for them. So it will be either your second sight, your sense, etc., etc., etc. And as an offshoot of Dolores, like over the years, she was the only person doing this type of thing, but she taught her modality far and wide. And one of the people that she taught was Candice Claude-Goldman, who later went on to create the modality of BQHT, which is beyond quantum healing. But rather than having to be in person and doing it with someone there in the room with you, her modality allowed people to use the internet, which then opened it up in a huger way, because lots more people could have access to it. You didn't have to live sort of a couple of hours down the road from someone. You could have a session with someone on the other side of the world. So it just made it a lot more accessible. And the person that I went to train with was Laura Whitworth. So she was a trainee of QHHT, and she found herself one day in a session with somebody, and her modality came from the fact that one day she was in session and a horrible, scary voice started speaking through her client. And she found that she panicked. She didn't really know what to do. She was sort of understanding that it wasn't the higher self, it was some other form of energy. And she called in God, source, creator, the angels, everyone she could think of to help clear this energy. And it was cleared and it was gone. And she discovered that there was an entity type of energy attachment on this client, which had been brought to the surface when she was in hypnosis, and she seemed to get a lot of these people. Obviously, that was her niche. That was what she came to help with. So to clear people that had these energy attachments. And so when I came into this, I came into the modality really just wanting to explore like other worlds and exciting things, and sort of go on quantum journeys and sort of learn all about that. But what I found myself confronted with was entity release, which I hadn't really thought that I was signing up for, but that kind of I was a little bit dubious about that, and to be honest, it's not really my calling. It's not something that I've had an awful lot of experience with. But I went on to do another modality after this, which also delved very deep into that type of clearing, and I haven't had many clients come to me that have needed that, but there has been the odd soul that may have been attached that we've helped back to the light. But it kind of gave me a good grounding in clearing in general. And what I have found as I've gone along is that as I've had sessions myself, I've kind of been planning to go to a place, and I would be swapping with friends, and I would find myself visualizing and seeing a lifetime in the place that I'm just about to go to, and it will be on a specific area of the land. And we sort of learned how to things would come like to help us to quantumly clear areas of the land. We'd sort of see in this hypnotic state energies on the land that would benefit from clearing, and it's just the strangest things would come, and we'd see dragons and all sorts of things. So we were kind of doing quantum energy clearing on the land in hypnosis, and then later when I'd go there, I'd connect to the land on a different level again. So, although I haven't really used the clearing techniques for clearing people as much energetically, because that hasn't been my sort of forte in life or what I've been called for, I have been using it on the land. And there's many, many different people now that have had have sort of created their own modalities. There's quite a few different ones out there, but they all basically just come back to protecting your energy before you start and asking for God, Source Creator, to sort of protect the space that you're in, and setting the intention that you just want to connect to the highest and purest source, love and light. And then you can use the hypnotic state to explore all different things for all different reasons. A lot of people I've found, have, including myself, have been like on a healing journey. So more of an emotional healing journey for myself. And I've just been discovering recently, like I've just been looking more deeply. If I feel myself being triggered by something, if I feel upset, or like if anything that gives me a negative emotional response, I'll now look at that and think, what is it I'm supposed to be learning here? Because when I first moved to this area, I had a lot of negative things happen with my neighbours, and I felt I was very much in victim mode. I sort of placed myself there. I was, oh, why is this happening to me? Why does nobody like me? Why am I experiencing this? Why is this so difficult? But once I'd kind of figured out that my lesson there was forgiveness, and it wasn't actually about me at all, it was just giving me the opportunity to learn to forgive, not to take it personally, and step up a level. So it's almost like you can ask these questions when you go into hypnosis. If there's things happening in your life, like you might be relationships with people that you don't fully understand and you need a deeper insight into it, you can ask the question like, how can I understand this better? And when you're in the hypnosis, they can use like past life experiences that will be almost a mirror for what's happening here. So it may be you've had different lifetimes with the same person that you're having difficulty with that you didn't manage to resolve in another lifetime. And you may have come back 3 different times, and they'll show you various lifetimes where you tried to do it and you didn't do a very good job. And so you obviously chose as a soul to come back again with that same soul family, same people. Maybe you switch roles, like say you were mother-daughter and you'll switch and you'll do it the other way around to give a different insight. So these are the sort of things that were coming up within the hypnosis sessions. Or they'll find a parallel life where perhaps you did something that made you unhappy, and this time around you wanted to make a different choice. So you may have stayed in a situation that just like drained you completely, whereas in this lifetime you came back to say, no, hang on, I don't want to be doing that. I'm going to actually make another choice now. And as a soul, that allowed you to sort of lift and elevate yourself to the next level. So we're all sort of on this type of journey. And another thing that I found really interesting on analysing these emotions and using that analysis to sort of be guided within the hypnosis to find answers is the Metaphysical Anatomy book, which looks at physical conditions which can be really strongly correlated with emotions. So you can often find the emotions will manifest as physical things within the body, and there's a book over there. So if there's anything, if I get a pain in my neck or something, now I'll go to the book and I'll look it up and I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because there can be emotional reasons for an awful lot of things that we experience physically within the body, and it can just be our body kind of going, hang on, you're not coping with this very well, and just to bring your awareness to it sometimes, just to help you, to guide you. And if you can become aware of that and find a different way to deal with it. Sometimes people miraculously have been able to sort of cure physical conditions. Obviously, we know that the power of positivity can do a similar thing. It's like the power of the mind to overcome physical ailments, physical things is really powerful. That's why the placebo effect obviously is so powerful, isn't it? But the mind has the capacity to heal the body. So as I said before, when I came into this modality and energy clearing, I didn't really think that I was particularly special or had any of these abilities like other people. I very much put other people on pedestals and thought they were more important, more capable, better than me. But what I've realised is that we are here also to step into our own power. And that now, to me, is one of the things that I really love to help other people to do, to realise that they are powerful beings and that they have the capacity to be every bit as important as anybody else. And we all have something that we are good at. So be that if we are interested in exploring this, through meditation, if we want to get these messages from our higher self, there'll be one of the clairs that we have a strength with, be that claircognizance, clairaudience. So it could be hearing, smelling. There's all sorts of different ways that your superconscious, your higher self can communicate with you, and there'll be one for you that's best. And that's something that we sometimes, or usually ask a question during a hypnosis session. There's an opportunity to ask questions of the higher self, and that'll be something that we'll ask towards the end. What is the best way for this person to communicate with their higher selves when they're not within a hypnosis session? Because meditation is a very similar process. It's stilling the mind, it's dropping into that quiet space and allowing for these knowings and thoughts to come through that then can help you on your path, basically. So within the quantum travel, we've seen so many different things, like, as I said, like dragons and unicorns, have been real. What we've explored is the reality that we're living in. And I've heard people talking about the ice walls around the Earth, but it's almost like what has come up towards the end of the most recent sessions that I've done is that we're because people talk about the flat Earth, and trying to get your head around if the Earth is flat or round, and what is the construct of this reality that we're currently in. The way that it was described to me was that we're on this huge sphere, which is the expanded version of Earth. And at the moment, we've only got access to a small part of that. So it's almost like there's a dome over a small part of that Earth that we've been contained within. And we can't get beyond that until our consciousness evolves to the level where we can then expand out. And then we'll have all of these other experiences that we're able to access. And we've explored many things, but what has been coming up a lot over the past few years was, first of all, we went and delved into the Atlantean thing, the fall of Atlantis. Lots and lots of people that came to me had trauma from being at the fall of Atlantis. And it was what transpired that has come through from lots of different sessions that I've had is that there was a core group of people that were abusing technology, and they had done so to such a degree that they jeopardised the stability of the planet, and what they did caused an actual physical crumbling. And from being a very highly evolved fifth dimensional consciousness construct that they were within, they fell back down to a third dimensional reality, because it was almost like they had then to work their way back up, which is what we're doing now, I believe. So apparently, from what we've seen through sessions and asking questions and delving into this, is that Earth has been in these 266 year cycles, 266,000 year cycles, and there's been 7 of them so far. And we've been through this 7 times, and we're on the last and final one where we are actually going to ascend out. But in each and every other time that we've tried to ascend out, we've fallen. So it's happened a lot of times. And we hear about this through myth and legend, through the great floods and the mud floods and all of this, but there's little bits of information that's come out, and you'll see lots of past life regressions where there are people that bring these things forward. But that seems to be what's coming through most strongly, that we're now in this final stage, which is some people call Ascension, and I've had a lot of people that have experienced that within their sessions and shared it, and it's slightly different for everybody that's come forward and had these sessions. They all experience that ascension differently, but lots and lots of people have said this time that they've come in, I mean, not everyone's chosen to go through this, that this is the first time that Earth has ascended with the inhabitants in situ on the planet. That's never happened before, which is why it's such a momentous thing and why we're being watched by all of the galaxies. And what I've also found, the very first lifetime that I went to, which was off-planet, that I saw for myself, was, I believe to be Lyra, and I was in a spaceship looking back at the planet, and there was a huge explosion and the planet was obliterated. And we were then on a mission, and we ended up on this quite watery planet, which I later found out was probably Sirius. But there was like a galactic type of battle taking place with these reptilian type creature things. And so when you look at our planet now, I often get very frustrated. I think, why are people so stupid? Why are we still having wars? Why is this happening? But when you look at that on a wider scale, this has been happening throughout the cosmos, on other planets as well. So it's kind of, it's almost like as we're going to be learning to ascend out of this duality construct that we've created for ourselves, that will have a ripple effect throughout the universe, and it will allow for other beings to then also ascend within their reality. So there was a lot of talk, you might have heard of David Icke. Everyone sort of thought he was a lunatic back in the 80s. He talked about these reptilian entities that were like running the world. And I, for one, thought he was a complete lunatic as well, until I started doing past life regression. And then there was an awful lot of talk of people having these reptilian energies attached to them, which to me just put me into a bit of a fearful state, thinking, oh, that sounds really horrible. I don't want things like that attaching to me and other people, and it's not a very nice thing. During the process of learning this modality, I became clairaudient, and I was able to hear my higher self. So that was something that I was using on a regular basis. And one day I woke up and I was meditating, and everything was completely quiet. I literally couldn't hear a thing. And I then did a clearing. I asked for Archangel Michael to clear me, put myself in a sphere of light, cleared my energy, and then it came back and I could hear. And I was like, what's happening? What's going on? Why is this happening? And it started happening on a really regular basis. And from what I could figure out with dowsing and connecting to my higher self after I'd cleared was that I had a lifetime where I was negatively polarised. And all of our lifetimes are connected to us via cords. We have cords to every single life. It almost makes a grid, like the grid of Earth. And there was a piece of me somewhere, I was told, that was a negatively polarised reptilian. There's me thinking, I don't like the thought of those, they're not very nice. And then, so, I was told that I should have a session with a friend of mine who's actually charges an awful lot of money, and I was like, why her? Like, I can get free ones with all these other people. No, my higher self wanted me to do it with this specific lady. And what happened was I saw the story of how the reptilian beings were infiltrated, and it started at the very beginning, and the reptilians actually were just another race of people, and their planet was very beautiful. It was full of light. It was like a jungle, but it was a very crystalline energetic planet. It was beautiful. It had a lovely energy. And the reptilians didn't eat. They were sort of, didn't look like these scary beasts. They kind of had almost a green tinge to them. They were very organic, but they survived by absorbing the excess energy around them from their environment, and so they balanced energies out. And so I think they were taken advantage of somehow along the line, and they were offered things, as is often the case that happens on Earth. They were offered things. They were told that you can be powerful, we can give you spaceships, we can help you do this, we can help you do that, come and do these jobs for us. And I'm not really 100% sure who these beings were that were trying to recruit them, but they kind of looked like people out of Star Wars with these funny helmets on and these slitty eyes. And I don't think they were fully human. They were almost like they looked sort of like Star Wars creatures. And I feel like they were androids because every single one of them looked the same. And as this beautiful reptilian creature that went along in a very, very sort of trusting manner, seduced by all of these offers, I then ended up in this spaceship. And the odd, strange thing was that as I was having this experience of having had this lifetime on Lyra where my planet was exploded, I could see that there was a being in a spaceship, and it looked like one of these beings. And then when I came to clear and help this reptilian version of me to ascend back to source, it looked just like this. So I'd been on both sides. So I'd had a lifetime experiencing being on the planet, having my home planet exploded. I'd also had the lifetime, conversely, where I'd probably been responsible for it. So it's like karma on a massive level. I know that's a bit off the wall, but anyway, there are some very strange things that have occurred and are occurring, and we're connected to so many different things that we probably would never even imagine. It's like gnomes, fairies, pixies. I've had people that have been water droplets travelling through the water system. I've had people that have been stars. I've had people that have been angelics. People have experienced all sorts of things when they've come, and they're not always things that you would imagine are conscious. Even just a rock, just being a rock for a while. Like, we've chosen to experience everything, be it a mineral, a plant, an element, a higher consciousness being, a lower consciousness being. We've wanted to experience everything because that is how we expand our conscious awareness, and we're all a part of Source, and that is how the whole expands itself, because it's experienced everything, be it of the light, of the dark, of the duality, and now we're evolving out of this part of our conscious experience into something more. And sort of my connection back to the earth energies and the grid work and the clearing is that I've myself been meeting a lot of people recently that have been saying within hypnosis sessions or just within meditation, they're finding out that they are energy keys or they are grid workers, or that when they go to the land, they're connecting in and they're seeing things that have happened there in the past, and a lot of that has been coming forwards also for me. So maybe that's probably the case for all of you, because you are all connected to the land in a really strong way, being dowsers. So yeah, that sort of is a common thread that unites us all. So I hope I didn't scare anybody. So I don't know if you've got any questions or any experiences that you'd like to share that might be relevant to that. Yes.
Your mention about the Ouija board early on in your journey. You're mentioning about the Ouija board experiment early on in your journey. I think that's really good advice for, going into exploring things, but with your eyes wide open, being fully grounded, connected, guided in a safe way. And you felt unsafe, so thank you for sharing your experience, because I think it's super important to have those guardrails in place. And also with your journeys, and seeing in the regressions with your colleagues and friends, how did you feel, given that you came from a skeptical sort of standpoint initially, yet you were experiencing off-world lives, experiencing beings that are maybe existing but in a different dimensional frequency, so they can't be seen by the physical seeing eyes. How did that make you feel? How did you adjust to that new vista?
I think because it happened over a number of years, and it happened quite gently. So my first past life regressions that I had myself, I connected to lives of American Indians, and they were very human lives. There were lives in stately homes where I'd had relationships with my father, and we'd tried that before and it had not been very successful, so we'd come back. So I started off really by doing my own healing work with my family members, sort of understanding more deeply the relationships that we had, which then helped us to have better relationships. But none of that really, it came in quite gradually, and I did a lot of reading along the way as well. And then I had lots of other people's experiences before I had my own. And so it sort of all builds up in layers as you're ready to understand a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. Because, but I did get quite scared and freaked out by the whole entity thing initially. But now I'm sort of understanding more that it's a co-resonance. And if we have quite a pure energy, obviously, even though I had this past life which needed clearing, but there can be, a lot of people have come to me that have had these past lives that have either been very traumatic or they've been sort of a bit dark and it's affected them in their here and now. So there was one lady that, she was a lovely lady, she was in her 20s, and she was having sort of experiencing the fact that she didn't have a healthy sexual appetite. Her relationship with her partner wasn't good in that regard, and when she came to me, she was expecting to see a she was a very spiritual person, a higher dimensional sort of high vibe type of life, and she saw herself as like not a very nice man that was abusing children, which is a very nice thing. But suddenly she realised while she was completely switching off that side of her, she didn't. And then she went to a second lifetime where she was being in a very unhappy relationship where she wasn't being treated nicely by her spouse. So it was the karmic balancing that she saw between the two experiences, but it was all feeding through and causing negativity within her current life. So by understanding that, I feel that she was able to get her own life back more on track. But it can be quite shocking sometimes. That wasn't very nice for her to see. She was hoping to see. I think usually your higher self is a little bit more gentle and will show you more what you're ready. But she came specifically with that one question in mind: why is this happening? I want to know the answer to this. So that was why I think in that situation it would come up. Anybody else?
What would you say is the most interesting?
Hang on.
What would you say was the most interesting result of a regression that you have done so far, one-on-one with a client?
Interesting result, as in the most beneficial, or? I don't know. I suppose from comparing, I know people that have had energy clearings where they've sort of had conditions such as bulimia that then they've then cured overnight. It's gone because it's been an energy that's been affecting them. But those haven't been people that I've cleared. I think the most interesting things that I've seen from my sessions and other people that fascinated me the most was the lives that related to King Arthur and Guinivere and that sort of era of history and the castles, because it connected in with me going to Wales. And my friend going to Wales. We'd both planned to go to Wales, but unbeknown to each other, to the same area at sort of roughly the same time. And she had a past life regression, and so did I before we went, and it related to Snowdonia region. And we both, when we went there, we both visited places that we were kind of just ended up in, sort of didn't really make a plan, and we thought, oh my goodness, I recognise this. That's sort of interesting wise. I don't know, every session's so different. Everybody gets what they want, really, or what they need. Like if people are... One of the nicest things, like you have like a life between lives. When you finish the life and you go back to source, like generally speaking, there'll be like a whole sort of team of people waiting to greet you. And that was one of the things that was so emotional. Just a lady she was getting on in years. She was really lonely, and she kind of didn't feel that she had anybody. And when she went to her life between lives, it was just such a massive, warm, loving greeting that she had with all of these people, these family members, and she was just so ecstatic. She just knew that they just wanted to let her know, you are not alone, because we can all feel quite alone sometimes, can't we? And we have got this team that's just like egging us on, just going, come on, you chose to come here for this. And we're all here and we love you so much. So that's nice. Anybody else?
So how, you've shared some really interesting stories, and some of them are out there. And how would you describe that the group regression is going to work? Because you said, hopefully everyone's okay with, these quite sometimes stark bits of content or, unusual. How would you describe the group regression will be run?
I tend to find that your higher self would know exactly what you would need to know at this time. If there's a question or something that has been on your mind, they would generally try to find a way to communicate that to you in the best way for you. So it always seems to be perfect for the individual because it's designed by them, but by the higher aspect of them, which would guide them. And And then we'd ask to sort of, sometimes it's not very clear why you're being shown something, but then you can ask that question after you've seen it, and then suddenly the penny will start to drop and you'll think, I understand the message now. So it'll be quite a short journey, but we'll just ask to see whatever it is that's for the highest good, and so we'll give you the greatest insight.
Thank you. You spoke about recording, like Dolores Cannon, she recorded possible future outcomes and where humanity is heading. And as you have just said, that most of your people come at it from an individualistic standpoint, but there was, I believe, some work done on a collective humanity standpoint with Dolores Cannon and some of those people that could connect in with the future of humanity. Have you come across any of that yourself?
Yeah, I do believe that she spoke about a two-world split, didn't she? So, yeah. I have. I've listened a little, and I'm not sure what that really means. I don't know. Perhaps there's two halves of humanity, and we've chosen to go on different paths, perhaps. But I just feel like we're always going to be. That to me, sort of, has always made me a little bit sort of fearful. I don't want to be on the other half. I don't want to be with the half that didn't make it. Do you know what I mean? I don't like that. I just like to think that everyone's going to be together. We're all finally going to learn unity, and we'll all go to the next best place, wherever that will be. If that happens, it's... Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I like to think, personally. But it's so hard to understand or to sort of get your head around how that would even be a possibility. And plus I really like it here on Earth, so I'm just kind of quite happy going to the beach, etc. and doing my walks in nature. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. But
like transcendence beyond duality.
Yeah.
You can cope with it.
I think the idea is that the Earth will still be the Earth, but it'll just be like a warmer, more hospitable, nicer environment without all of the wars and fighting, and we'll sort of be able to enjoy the Earth on a different level. So has anybody got any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you. You talked about people being from Atlantis, and you mentioned that the Atlantean people got too far advanced, too far in advance of the humanity as it was at the time. Has anybody said how they managed to stop that? Well, they obviously didn't, because Atlantis is no more. But do you not think we're perhaps getting rather close to that Atlantean point with the DNA and everything? So how do we stop that?
Yeah.
Perhaps we need a group session on it.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are. It's almost like we are going through a rerun of that, aren't we, to some degree? Because there's an abuse of technology which shouldn't be occurring. But I don't think, for whatever reason, as a collective, we haven't chosen to go down that route. I think that's the people like us that are choosing differently. And I think we will overcome perhaps the smaller minority that are trying to take us down that dark route. I don't think we're not, well, everyone always says we've already won, or whatever, we've already come out of this, because that reality exists somewhere, the ascended version of us that has made it beyond this and transcended all of the war and the horrible things that are happening. That version of us exists somewhere, so somehow we're going to get between here and there and it'll all be okay. So I think we just need to keep the faith, don't we?
I think it was us talking about this, the new Earth beyond in that ascended version, and how it was a combination of the Celtic ways of living with support from new technology, but in a more high vibe way. So is there anything you can maybe share on that of how you came across that? And maybe or just general.
Yeah, I think that was Danny, wasn't it? My friend, who had a session where he was sort of what he was describing. He looked kind of like a Celtic person, and he was living in Wales, and he looked like someone from the past. He was living in a roundhouse, and it was sort of straw, and his clothing looked quite sort of organic-y. But then what we figured out as we went along was this was actually the future Earth. And so even though it was like we'd gone backwards in some respects, we were also much more spiritually advanced and had sort of more intuitive abilities. They were really online, so we were kind of living more in harmony with the Earth, but also on a higher spiritual level. I'm not really sure where the technology came into that. I think it was almost like everything that we needed was there and it was easy, but it was more the intuitive side of it that I remember the speaking of, really. But
it's just reassuring, because sometimes... It's just reassuring to hear that, because sometimes, you see films like Terminator, and you think, oh my gosh, is this a possible outcome? And, when you can see that there's the potential for a high vibe integration with the use of technology whilst being connected with the land, with the rhythms, with being grounded and community-based, it just, for me personally, it gives me some hope, Yeah.
Yeah, that's some of the things that I've been hearing of lately are that all of that will disappear, and we will be very much having to be in a position where we have to use our telepathy, we have to use our other senses to communicate with each other, because telephones and things won't be there anymore. Has anyone heard of Alison Coe? She does regression sessions and shares the sessions online, and there's some fabulous ones that she's shared. But her latest client was sort of describing that she had to use a bicycle, the cars weren't working, and they had to find each other in groups. They were quite far apart, and they had to learn to use the powers of their mind. And she said the one thing that she missed was films. She missed watching TV, but other than that, everything else was brilliant. Right, has anybody else got any questions or anything to say? Or should we have a break and have a coffee and then get ourselves ready? Yeah. Okay.